Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today. We are at the 5-year anniversary of the death of Roddy Piper. This was honestly something that I didn't have on my calendar or anything like that. Just you know, as I got home from work and I started to scroll through some tweets. It was a mention here, a mention there, a couple of pictures posted on Instagram talking about the 5-year anniversary of Roddy Piper. Roddy Piper, I can honestly tell you that was probably more out of wrestling while I was in wrestling. But, as far as like the wrestling deaths that hit, Twitter or, sort of, come into our lives, however you hear about them, as, more and more of the guys that you watched while you were growing up hit you. A lot of deaths hit people differently. Honestly, when it comes down to it, the Chris Benoit suicide/murder scene that happened in Atlanta back in the early 2000s, that, is probably going to be the one that hit everybody the biggest. To me, honestly, Macho Man Randy Savage's death came as such a surprise, hit me at a moment where I just really couldn't believe that one of the greatest wrestling legends of all time passed away. I can remember as I was growing up, I believe it was Tom Brokaw on NBC Nightly News. He mentioned the Junkyard Dog's death when he died in a car accident, and I think that was kind of like the first time wrestling deaths made the mainstream news to me, that I just was kind of like, I hadn't heard of Junkyard Dog a lot other than watching old WWF wrestling tapes. I knew that he was like a wrestling legend, but, he was kind of the first guy that died. And as a kid, I held on to that because if Tom Brokaw is going to bring it up on the NBC Nightly News, even if it's in like passing and they just mention his name, the dude had to have been one of the biggest, largest figures there is in Earth, and maybe they just needed one more little news story to complete their, 25-minute news program for the day. And that's why they mentioned the Junkyard Dog, a guy that, was a big guy like in territories and had a good little minute in the WWF and in passing, and that was about it. But to me, honestly, Roddy Piper, when his death hit the timeline, he's a guy that I met twice, SummerSlam 2010, as well as a WrestleFest here in California. The first one that they had, the first one that I went to of their events here in the Bay Area. Piper was there, one of the main guys to be there. I think he might have not even been a part of like the mega ticket that they had. He might have been like a sponsor guy that got brought in. He cost a little bit more money. I know that I met him. I met Rob Van Dam. I think they were guys that people brought in to make some money on the side. But anybody that ever got a chance to meet Roddy Piper, Luke, we've made fun of them for this for 10 freaking years now. But Luke, one way or another, got a hug from Roddy Piper at SummerSlam. When Roddy Piper met me, he started talking to me about my dad and the way that he like brings you in and the way that like he talks to you. It's like he really cares about you. And maybe it is a gimmick. Maybe it is, how he learned to get to these fan fest things. Because I'm sure for a lot of wrestlers, these things are hell on earth. They're making a lot of money, but they're kind of just hearing the same old story and the same old song and jazz from person after person. Some people, you just walk up, throw some money at them, take a picture, and probably as that guy walks away, the wrestler's ego is hurt. Like, what the hell was that? I mean, like, like it just doesn't make sense. But to me, honestly, Roddy Piper easily is on my top list of people that really cared about the fact that I waited in their line, that I got that chance to meet with them and take a picture. He made it memorable, talking about my father, listened to my questions as I asked him about his run-in at WrestleMania 19 and how it's kind of like a moment that nobody really ever talks about. But that's easily the biggest pop on that show. And a lot of people mention the Stone Cold Steve Austin pop on Monday Night Raw when Mick Foley won the championship from The Rock. I think the Piper pop in Seattle at WrestleMania 19 is one of the loudest pops that I've ever seen before. As he gets into the ring and he shows himself during the Hulk versus Vince match, something that we never really saw coming. We hadn't seen him in wrestling in at least about 3 years since before WCW went down. See, those are the things that I really remember. Because, I mean, like, Hogan and Piper main evented WrestleMania. Piper fought in a boxing match with Mr. T at WrestleMania 2. He fought the big fat dude with the damn flower shop at WrestleMania 3. That was supposed to be his retirement match. I remember him being a commentator during the early 90s, especially with like the Virgil versus Ted DiBiase feud. He was on Superstars. I knew him more as a commentator, almost more than anybody else. He came back and did that deal with Hogan and the NWO when he came in after the Macho Man match at Halloween Havoc, which then led to him being the main event of Starrcade, and the biggest tomfoolery fuckeries of all time in that championship match where he beats Hogan, and then all of a sudden, the next night, we find out the championship wasn't even on the line. Main event of Starrcade, your biggest match is a non-title match, and you never told us? That's just dumb in my mind. But, I don't know. Piper, easily, when you hear stories on shoot interviews, whether if it's his book, his interviews, listening to other people talk about him, guy put family first. Guy put that on the map, and that's how it was going to be. He took the high road. If it came down to, spending time at home or making money, he was going to pick them every time. You're going to hear stories about his crazy days, about him, touring Puerto Rico with Ric Flair, turning down money, taking paydays in cocaine instead of cash. That's just the way the 80s were. I mean, those are really the only bad stories that you're ever going to hear. I know, like, before he died, stories came out about him and Nash, trying to find out who's got the bigger junk in the locker room, and one guy says one story, another guy says another story. Piper says that he stood up to Nash. Nash said there's no way in the world that he did it. It is what it is. And I know that Piper and Austin had some heat, like, right before Piper passed away. I really hope that Stone Cold Steve Austin was able to put that in the back. I think it had something to do with Piper's podcast. It might have got canceled on the same network that Austin was on, and Piper thought that Austin had something to do with it. I just don't see it. I mean, that's not me. I know that some guys have egos in the back. That's not for me to hear, or care about. From the interviews that I've seen, it seems like he's almost one of the most loved guys in the wrestling business. A guy who did it the right way. I know that Hogan said some things that if Piper just would have said he would have put him over, Hogan and Piper would have traded the belt back and forth for years. I don't really think that's the way Vince wanted that to go. But I think that he wanted one champion. That's the way it's sort of been. They did a title change here, a title change there. But most of the time, guys like San Martino had the belt for years. And it was just to say, this is the guy. No matter what. We're going to put the belt on this guy. We're going to stack the odds against him. You're going to think that he's going to lose it. But he overcomes it. He's Superman. Superman of the WWF. That's the way that Hogan was supposed to be. But, even though he wasn't one of my most loved, most watched guys, just the way that he did it in wrestling, that's somebody that I still care about. 5 years later, I see these tweets, it still hits me in that weird spot. So hopefully you guys thinking about Piper, I'm thinking about him too. I'm going to reach out to Jim, see if I can get him to make one of these videos. He doesn't make a lot of videos these days, so if he does, it'll be special. But head on over to the Jim Knight 888 channel. Hopefully I can get him to do something. I know that if you go over there, he's going to have something that you're going to like anyway. So that's just me. Peace out, guys. Thanks.